So allow me to play my interlude, and we will be back with the title of the show, which is Gun Owners Who Are Visually Impaired or Blind. So here we go.
Welcome to Third Eye Visions, where we motivate the blind, stimulate your mind, and welcome all kind.
What's up, everybody? What's up, everyone? What's up? I am so glad to be here, having gone live in the West Isle. Allow y'all a chance to sit back and enjoy this very interesting topic. Gun owners. We're going to be talking about gun ownership, laws, all that good stuff. You know what I'm talking about? And I have none other than my man all the way from I ain't gonna say where yet, but anyway, from somewhere in the United States. My man Brando, we're gonna talk about all that self-defense, all that. We're gonna incorporate it all.
Mike, that's my cousin Nancy.
We're gonna let this interlude roll for about 30-40 seconds and get everybody a chance to get up in here. I want to say happy Sunday to everyone. Thanks for subscribing to Third Eye Visions, man. I love y'all.
Visions, where we motivate the blind, stimulate your mind, and welcome all kind.
That's right. That's right. Third Eye Visions, baby, where we motivate the blind, stimulate your mind, and welcome all kind. Gun ownership, man. Visually impaired people own guns. Blind people own guns. I didn't even know that, man. I'm blind myself, so maybe after this I might go out and give me a 380. The things are getting rough these days. I have to protect myself. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not advocating violence. It's protecting yourself, baby. We'll be ready in a few minutes.
Hey, I'm Mike. That's my cousin Nancy. Welcome to the Third Eye Vision. We're going to get it popping for you. Keep it moving.
Hello, everyone. This is Marcus, Anthony's co-worker.
All right.
The host of
We're going
Third
to
Eye
cut it short
Vision.
today, ladies and gentlemen, because we are about to get into a very interesting topic. Let me get my music ready, and we're going to be talking to my man, Brando. Hold tight, y'all. Let's see. We're going to share this screen right here. Okay, one more thing. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Third Eye Visions, where we motivate the blind, stimulate your mind, and welcome all kind. My name is Anthony Parker, and we're going to be talking to a gun owner. He is visually impaired. I recently talked to someone about maybe 2 months ago, a blind gun owner. And oh my God, his name leaves me for a minute. But anyway, that was an interesting discussion, and hopefully we can reduplicate. That's not a word. Duplicate what we did last time. But I feel that this is gonna even tops it because this man has a lot of things to talk about. As I mentioned, self-defense, things of that nature. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure to the new heads, hit that notification bell, hit the notification if you got to, so if you can be in the loop and know what's going on, baby. I can't tell you everything. Let your friends tell you because they know about it. I'm talking about the old subscriber. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure after all that you've done that, make sure hold on here. Okay, it probably was an echo. Okay, make sure all that you share. So with that being said, I want to bring Brando to the stage and let him talk about a little bit who he is, where he's from, if you want to mention, and some of his accolades before we get into the topic. What's up, Brandy?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Brief audio check. Can you guys hear me?
Let me turn this. There we go.
Brief. Can you? How do I
Got
sound? Everything good?
I had to turn the music down. You was a little too low, but that's all right. We're gonna.
Everything good?
Everything good.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Brando Collins. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, originally. I have lived in Chicago pretty much all my life. All of my I grew up in Chicago. That's probably the best way to describe it. I'm sorry. And I've traveled a bit. I've moved around, but no place like the USA. Hey. Um, so I am an international self-defense instructor. I specialize in empty hand tactics, women's self-defense, stranger danger for children, improvised weapons, and gun owning is something that's kind of been around me ever since I was a kid. I've been dealing with weapons and working with weapons and the combatives that surround weapons since I've been about 6 years old. So I guess it kind of first started out with my dad. I was kind of born with the proverbial golden knife, golden Glock, or however you want to think of it, in my mouth. You know what I mean? In my hand, so to say. And kind of just went on from there. Learn how to disassemble. You learn how to clean. You learn how to maintenance. You learn how to take care of things. There's so much to actually owning a firearm than actually just owning a firearm, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but
Definitely does.
Roll.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can. No, let the questions roll. That's pretty much me in a package, in a nutshell. I do self-defense pretty much full time. I'm a full-time martial arts student. I don't do anything but train. There are a lot of different types of firearms to train on.
Okay.
I can't say that I've trained on all of them, but what's available to civilians, I've definitely worked on. But yeah.
Okay. Now, great introduction. Now, we were talking off camera about, and I'm not trying to label any state, any city, any like that, but it's rough in every state. You were telling me that your dad, while raising you, he was very adamant about you learning different self-defense techniques and being able so that you can take care of yourself, defend yourself, and having a gun definitely is a way of doing so. But in the meantime, you were also, as you mentioned earlier, involved in martial arts and everything. So tie all that into how you became a person who uses gun as a sense of a form of self-defense. You feel what I'm saying? I know I kind of stumbled over that, but that's all right.
No, it's these very, very quick. So for me, and this is something that I didn't grow up thinking martial arts equates to judo, karate, taekwondo, or Huan Fa, or anything of this nature. I didn't think that you could boil that. And the reason I didn't think that was because I was never indoctrinated to think that. I was taught to think that martial arts were military arts. And what is a military art? Well, it's an art form from the military. So that, to me, I was raised to believe could equate to anything from an eye gouge with fingers to attacks with helicopter gunships. There is no limitation to what the military can and does do to succeed. I mean, there are numerous military art forms and sub art forms within those art forms. You know what I mean? And kicking, punching, throwing, joint locking, limb destruction, concussions, nerve attacks, so on and so forth. These are not the only means of doing so. Mm-hmm. It's just it's kind of like, even in the United States, like even when we talk about martial arts in the United States, a lot of times what we see is people think that you say you do martial arts, oh yeah, you do karate. Even if you don't do karate, which is something specific in and of itself, right? You do karate. So if judo's karate, jujitsu is karate, hapkido's karate, aikido's karate, everything is karate, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what people boil it down to. But there are people who there are people who do a slightly better job. They know that there are different types of martial arts, but they don't take it as far as they should. Because again, like I said, so far as I'm concerned, tanks, the art of tank battle, the strategic missile forces. These are all arts to me. You know what I mean?
Mm.
We don't see them that way because we were never taught to classify them that way. So guns, firearms is just they were it's just another style of martial art, and that's the way I came up, and that's what I was taught.
Wow. Okay.
That's how I grew up, and that's how guns were introduced to me. So I started empty hands training at 4, and I started firearms training around 6. And the first firearm that I was ever introduced, the first firearms period, the first group of firearms I was ever introduced to were long guns. Now, those were not the first fire. That's not the first firearm that I ever fired. First firearm that I ever fired was actually a handgun, a pistol, obviously with assistance. But when it comes to long guns are kind of like the bread and butter of, I guess you could say, like the pioneering world, like the prepping world. A lot of people, it's kind of the iconic vision of what we think of when we think of guns helping the pioneers of America, move across the West and muck out the Louisiana Purchase and do all these other things.
Mm.
It's the long gun. It's not so much. I mean, 6-shooters are there. We have iconic pistols also, but long guns. And I'll give you an example of just how influential and how natural it is for people to have long guns. You can buy long guns pretty much any state in the United States of America at the age of 18. With a parent's permission at the age of 16. And you can buy handguns only at the age of 21.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
So that's one of those interesting little things. You can actually go in and pick up a 100-shot, shotgun, or a AR-15 or an AR-15 and I'm not belittling this. A lot of people who would be saying what I'm saying would be saying this as a means of saying that, that's not a good thing to do. I'm not opposed to this necessarily. I'm opposed to it for some people, and we can get into the type of people who I think should and shouldn't be owning firearms. But I'm not necessarily opposed to that at all. Because again, there's a reason why it is that way. It is that way historically because long guns have been what so many people went out into the world and used to kind of make a way in it.
Okay. Before we go further into that, for people who are uneducated to a great deal about guns, what do you mean by long guns? I'm
glad you asked. A long gun is essentially any firearm with a barrel that is 16 inches or longer.
Okay.
Yep. So any firearm with a barrel that's 16 inches or longer is a long gun. There are some other things that fall into place. Long guns need stocks. You don't have to have a stock on one. It's not necessarily going to make it illegal or something like this. But first off, it'd be damn hard to aim it. But second off, within the classifications, within the way laws are written, sometimes it makes it such that, a long gun is any weapon with a stock and a 16-inch barrel. So if you take the stock off of a long gun, and some people do, or give it a barrel length, or let's just say you tweak the barrel length, you could turn it to what's called an other. And an other is kind of a medium between a long gun and a pistol. Now, I don't own any others. I don't really talk about them too much. I know they exist, and I know that's, again, what they are, but I don't get into that because I don't own or operate them. But a long gun is a firearm with a stock and a 16-inch barrel, and it doesn't have to have the stock. But
what is a stock? So you have to educate because I don't know.
The stock of any firearm, be it a long gun or any sort of, and a long gun is also, a lot of people will know them as rifles, right? We say long gun.
Right.
Community, because a long gun could be a rifle, it could be a carbine, it could be a sniper, it could be a lot of different things. There's a lot of different types of long guns. It's just an umbrella word, right? Mm-hmm. But a stock is what's on a long gun, the back of it. Some stocks are adjustable, some are fixed, some are telescoping, right? But a stock is what's on the back of the long gun in order to help you brace it into your shoulder.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Now, as far as long guns are,
Did you want the other part of that, the other side of that? Because you
yeah.
asked what long guns were. So what a pistol is. A pistol is pretty much a firearm that has a barrel shorter than 16 inches. So if it's shorter than 16 inches, and pistols also can't have stocks. Pistols cannot have stocks. So if you have something that has a barrel shorter than 16 inches with a stock on it, that's not a pistol. Pistols have to have braces, or you can have like a thumb hole butt plate. You know what I mean? That does not That's pretty much, it's flat back here instead of having something to brace on your shoulder. It has nothing. You can have pistols like that, or you can have a pistol brace, which is a modulated tubular sort of bladed telescoping system that also helps you brace it on your shoulder. And they're also folding braces also.
Wow.
They're also folding braces for pistols, right?
That was a bit detailed in terms of what you said. So I want to stop you every chance I get.
Absolutely. So, there's a lot of information here. Go ahead.
So is it like illegal to put? You say pistols don't have stocks on them. Is it illegal to place one on there, or people do it for specific?
Is it illegal to place one on there? It can be if you don't have the proper licensing. If you put a stock on a pistol, it becomes an SBR. That's an acronym that means short-barreled rifle, right?
Oh,
yeah. So if you put a stock on a pistol, it becomes an SBR. SBRs are legal in some states, not in all states. In my state, SBRs are not legal. in Illinois, like my home state, I'm not talking about necessarily where I am right now, but in Illinois, my home state, where my stuff is registered, my True Blue stuff is registered. SBRs are not legal, for example. You know what I mean? Okay. And other places like Georgia, they're legal. So, and this is kind of where, you just need to be aware of your state and even to a certain degree county statutes and regulations and laws of what is illegal and what isn't.
Okay, cool. Now you let's talk a little bit about your vision, because I want to incorporate that into you actually owning guns and things like that. You've lost your sight. Tell a little bit about your sight loss.
So I was born with congenital glaucoma. So congenital meaning from birth. So like I was born with the problem, but the problem didn't actually take effect until I was 2 years old. And so when I was 2 years old is when I lost the majority, I would say, of my vision. Like the majority of my vision I lost when I was 2 years old. Now, due to injuries, because of career choices, I've lost more vision over time, bits and pieces more. Like I was telling Anthony off camera, I lost a little bit of my, I had a little bit of vision in my right eye, but the vision in my right eye was always terrible up until I was, in my late teens. In my late teens, I lost the rest of my vision in my right eye. Now I have none, So that's how I lost it, congenital glaucoma.
Okay. And you also stated that you started learning to shoot guns at 5 or 6 years of age, right?
Yeah, my introduction to guns started at 6. I fired my first gun with, again, like I said, assistance. I can claim that at 6, but the reality with the actual training, the true training, firearms training starts the second you put your hands on firearms, because I can't tell you how long a lot of instructors will make you wait to shoot a weapon if they don't trust that you know how to take care of that weapon, if they don't trust that you will never that you will never, quote unquote, flag someone or flag an eye. If flags, it simply means let your barrel track across an area where it should never go, right? So for example, if you are at the shooting range, your barrel should never not be aimed at downrange at your target. At all times, it should be aimed downrange at your target, unless it's in a bag and you're walking out of the range or walking into the range. That's the only time it should be aimed anywhere else. But it should always be aimed downrange at a target. Period.
Okay.
So if that barrel tracks across someone's shooting lane or two people's shooting lane, or even even at yourself, anywhere, but downrange, you flagged something. You flagged people. And that literally, in some circles, could get you killed. Other circles, you might get your ass beat. Other times, you might just get never allowed to come back to that range. That is a deadly thing to
Oh,
do.
wow.
Never do that.
Okay. Now, speaking of the training, I want to. This is like a two-part question. Tell us the training techniques that you had to go through as a blind person, and then just in general, is it the same for
Well, so
anyone
yeah,
else?
starting off as a kid, it equates to gun safety. And gun safety essentially is first rules first. There's no such thing as an unloaded gun. It doesn't matter if the gun's unloaded or not. If you think the gun's unloaded, or even if the slide is back and you can see that the chamber is visibly empty, there's no such thing as an unloaded gun. You treat all guns as if they're loaded. And then you treat all guns as if they have a hair trigger, again, even if they don't, right? So the only time that gun should be, you don't aim a gun at nothing that you don't intend to destroy or aren't willing to destroy in an accidental discharge. Safety always needs to be engaged, except in times of cleaning. And again, in times of cleaning, you need to make sure that gun is aimed in a safe direction. There is a whole protocol of different safety features for different firearms. You know what I mean? Like some firearms have grip safeties, some firearms have trigger safeties. Become familiar with whatever firearm you're talking about. If someone hands you a firearm, the first thing that you do is you ask them, first off, you understand that there's no such thing as an unloaded gun, but you always ask the question anyway, is this loaded?
Right.
Is the safety? First off, is this loaded? Yeah, that's the first thing. Second, is the safety on? Next, again, hands always being away from that trigger. And that's another rule. That's another rule too that I'll introduce in a second. But aiming away from you, the next question after that you ask the person who handed you that firearm is, how do I use this? Right? There are so many thousands of different types of firearms out on the market at any given time that it's impossible to know absolutely how to use just anything that someone hands you unless you're just that good of an expert and you shoot that much and you have access to that many firearms, right? I don't care who you are. Don't be ashamed to ask how to use a firearm. If you don't know, you don't know. You know what I mean? The next rule is, if you don't intend on shooting, keep your fucking finger off the trigger.
What?
Yeah.
Talk. Yeah, word. Okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, you got it.
Go ahead. I know. Yeah, let's go. Go ahead.
Keep your hands off the trigger. I highly recommend all people who, especially new gun owners, right? I highly recommend, especially new gun owners, take safety courses. I also highly recommend new gun owners also do dry fire exercises. And a dry fire exercise simply equates to positioning and stance work as opposed to actually pulling a trigger with a live round in it. There's a lot of work you can do with an empty gun as opposed to actually having a magazine with bullets in it. You can take an empty gun and do a lot of actual training.
Okay.
I mean, so.
Now, how hard was it with all this training that I know you did go through? How hard was it for you being visually impaired? Was it extra hard, or what was the situation?
Well,
on
it's
that?
kind of interesting and that's kind of why I inserted what I inserted earlier about starting out as a kid. It wasn't as hard as it's a lot of people might think, because it started out with me so young. A lot of the stuff started out so young. It can be harder if you're older. Like a lot of people, because as a blind person growing up, you learn very quickly how to fight for yourself because you don't have a choice. As a person who's new to the whole thing, like, you have to learn how to advocate for things that you never thought, like you never, if you're newly blind, you never thought you'd ever have to advocate for the right to be independent. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't seem like something that you would have to actually advocate for. But it's absolutely something that you have to advocate for in this world, because people will take that right from you without thinking about it, So gun rights are just another side of that little thing, You have to learn to be like, okay, like, this is the position I'm in. Where in the law does it say that a blind person can't own a firearm? Or where does it say that a blind person or not even in, not that, I mean, that would be, I guess, a legal issue, but where does it say in logic or reasoning that a blind person can't aim a firearm? Are is how do we, what are the senses that we use to aim? I mean, a lot of the questions that I get from people, especially as a blind person, don't really register as very intelligent questions. And one of my favorite is, when you go to the range, how do you know where you're shooting?
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about those questions, because I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I said, by me being totally blind, those are some of the questions that I had in my mind, and I've asked some people who own guns, but they didn't thoroughly tell me. So right now, you tell me. Let's talk about those. Talk about them.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that question specifically, I find to be a strange question, because whenever you go to a place where you are in control of something, if you don't know where you are putting objects, if you have no idea where you're placing things, no one talks about how blind you are. They talk about how bad your memory is. They talk about how bad like maybe you're operating with maybe not a full deck or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
People talk about your cognitive ability. They're not talking about your vision. So what happens is, when you walk into a range, you go to a counter, you handle your business at the counter, then you go to another counter. You handle your business at that counter, then you go to the range. You are assigned a lane. You go to that lane. You are the person who has to put the target up. And even if you're not the person who puts the target up, what blind person or any sighted person, what that you know of, is not cognizant of like being inside of a bathroom stall, right? Like,
No, I understand that.
you know what I mean? So when for the people who actually do have a problem knowing where to aim a gun, those are not, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see those as visual problems, hearing problems, tactile problems. Those are not the problems of those sort of senses. To me, those are cognitive issues. Those are mental issues.
I got you.
And I'll tell you that it's on any form in the state. That is it's not blindness. It's not anything that's death related that would bar someone from owning a gun. But there are mental things. There are mental lack of mental faculty, so on and so forth, that would prevent a person like that from owning firearms. And I am all for that, right? Like, if you've got some sort of mental problem, then you probably should not be owning a gun. If you literally have no idea where a gun target is when you are the one who sent it down the lane and you can't aim a gun in that direction, then no, you shouldn't own a gun. But that has nothing to do with your vision. If you put a poster board on the wall, you know where the poster board is, don't you?
True.
You know what I mean?
But let me play the devil's advocate and ask you this. Yes, that's true. We do know where we put things are in the vicinity. Now, as far as being more centralized or more like like trying to hit a bull's eye or something like that, explain to me how that's done or
okay. So this gets us into the question of defensive shooting and target shooting.
Okay.
So when it comes to defensive shooting, that's exactly what you're talking about. We're talking about bullseyes, and you're talking about in the X ring, and you're talking about even the concept of a headshot to a certain degree,
right?
Not in its entirety, right? But to a certain degree, even headshot. There are certain things that are endemic to target shooting that you just don't do in a self-defensive situation. I'll give you a perfect example.
Cool.
When you go to the range and you're standing in your lane, you've seen people, you've probably experienced or heard about people taking their time to aim and being very careful about locking in on their target, right?
Right.
Okay, that's not self-defensive shooting. You know why? Because in a self-defensive situation, your adrenaline is going far too fast for you to actually sit and focus and aim on anything. True. You don't sit and lock in and carefully aim at the person's eye socket in a self-defensive situation. That's not how any of that works. No cop would agree to that. No military person would agree to that. No person who's been involved in a self-defensive interaction would agree to that, unless the person's had a rifle and they've had some distance. There's no self-defensive situation that does not involve adrenaline at the civilian level, especially if they haven't had extensive training, the type of training that most people can't afford, right? Especially on their own. So yeah, it involves adrenaline, and this is exactly why if you're going to practice self-defensive shooting, there's a lot of things that go into it, and one of which is learning to shoot between heartbeats, learning to shoot between breaths, learning to actually uh, simulate an actual
Right.
reality-based situation, and it's not something that you just simulate with firearms. It's something you simulate full stop. You simulate it with knives. You simulate it with other various edged weapons, melee weapons, empty hands, multiple attackers. You anti-rape situations. Anytime you get into a self-defensive situation, you want to be able to simulate it as real life as possible, because all of that shit that, I mean, you see people doing forms all the time. You see people doing it in the air all the time, and it's always in very slow motion, and it looks nice. But nothing that happens in real life looks nice. It's never pulled off pretty.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
honestly, I guess that's the rule of today. If you take nothing else from me, add reality-based stuff to your training. Reality-based situations are key.
Okay. So that was interesting. So, getting back to defense shooting versus target shooting and things of that nature. What would you? And I know this may be off the cuff, but what would you consider a sharpshooter as being? What type of shooting is that? Because you
Sharpshooter?
you know have you know those marksmen or the people that if there's like a hostage situation, they call in those.
Mm. Well, that's I wouldn't say that that's I guess I would say that's a little of both, but in saying that it's both, it also isn't either. Like I would say it's in a class of its own. I'd say it's exactly what you called it. It's sharpshooting. Sharpshooting is in a class. Sharpshooting and sniping are in classes all of their own.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's a military that's military level, like gunmanship, if you will.
Mhm. Okay.
I've never actually been trained in it. I don't know. I can't. Obviously, I mean, at the highest levels of like firearms training, a lot of it's math, right? A lot of it's knowing ballistics. A lot of it's knowing ranges. A lot of it's being able to calculate on the fly. A lot of it's being able to do windage. A lot in that, I guess, honestly, I'm kind of being redundant because that has to do with math, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of at the apex, at the peak of like what it is to be able to be a good shooter. That's what you're doing, and that's kind of what sharpshooting and sniping get to. Sharpshooting is a little bit more. It's not the same as sniping. Sharpshooters are a little bit more in close. They
Right. Right.
do a bit more quick speed. They're also prone to use a bit more, a few more like semi-automatic platforms. But yeah, I mean, anyway.
Okay, cool. So as we get back to the blind gun ownership deal, what aside from the few responses that you had, or questions, or the comments that people have stated about blind people owning guns, what other kind of, have you gotten any like backlash of any kind of people, people talking about maybe blind people shouldn't have guns, and this and that and the third? Have you gotten any other comments about that
There's thousands of.
that you
Okay.
personally have gotten?
Oh, that I personally have. Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
there's yes. The answer is yes, but I mean, I guess that there's so many that it's hard to actually fixate on one in particular. I mean,
Well, how do you handle that when because they probably, people feel, because you've gave some great justifications or understanding to the audience as to the techniques that blind people could actually use to
well,
carry to use guns.
see, the thing that blind people do is no different than a sighted person who can't see who has a gun. But like, I guess the only thing that you can explain to sighted people is how the dynamics of guns and self-defensive situations actually work.
Mhm.
If they don't agree, you can try to lead them to experts, because the experts don't disagree with what I'm telling you. Every person who
I like that.
the everyone who uses a gun professionally, again, like I said, every person who uses a gun, and I wouldn't say every, I don't want to be. I'm being hype. I'm being hyperbolic for kind of for delivery's sake and to a certain degree. But I would definitely submit to you, and I stand by this, that the majority of the people who use firearms professionally agree with what I'm telling you. Shooting is not about vision. Shooting is about target acquisition. And target acquisition is not something that is a visual only thing.
Now,
And that's
repeat say that again. Repeat that again. I
okay.
like.
So pretty much, shooting is not a visual only thing. Shooting is about target acquisition, and target acquisition is not a visual only concept.
Okay, go
And
ahead.
so it's just so. I mean, there are lots of stories. I mean, one of the ones that a lot of people gravitate to was the situation where there was a guy who pretty much gave verbal instructions to a blind guy. But the guy who was giving the verbal instructions, he was shot and he was paralyzed. So he couldn't actually do the shooting himself. So he gave the instructions to the blind guy, and the blind guy followed the verbal instructions and killed more than 150 people. Now
Wow.
those two guys were Marines, right?
Wow.
You know
When
that
was this? Wait, let's stop. Let's marinate. Let this marinate. When was this?
this was in World War II in the Pacific. I don't remember which island. I want to say Guadalcanal, but let's just go ahead and say it was an island in the Pacific during World War II. And this is a very common story. No, not common. Let me rephrase. It's a very well-known story. It's a story a lot of blind gun owners gravitate to because it illustrates the concept that vision is not how people shoot targets. It's not. It's how the majority of people shoot targets because that's what they have and that's what they use. That's a primary medium. But if you don't have vision, does that mean that you're going to just fucking, well, forgive me, pardon me. Does that mean that you're just going to put your gun in your mouth and just quit? Does it mean you're going to surrender to the enemy? Does it mean that you're going to just lay down and be raped? Does it mean you're going to allow your children to be abducted? What does that actually mean?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times what you're getting from people who are detractors are, you don't have vision, therefore you shouldn't. Shouldn't what? Shouldn't survive?
I've heard that. I've heard it.
You know what I mean? And you can fill in the blank as to what sighted or not sighted, but other people think visually impaired people shouldn't do. You know what I mean? Again, fill in the blank. Shouldn't defend yourself. Shouldn't own a weapon. Shouldn't defend yourself with a weapon. Shouldn't be able to defend yourself with a weapon. Shouldn't learn how. Like, and there's no justification for any of these things outside of the idea that because you can't see, you can't do it. Well,
And that has not
if
trying
you
to.
think that you can't see and you can't do it, I prove that wrong all the time.
That has been the case. That has been the case. What you just said was what most was what I get or what I hear from a lot of sighted individuals and whatnot. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, I kind of fell in that trap a little bit to where, but as I had gotten older and have talked with a lot of other people and people like you and a couple others by doing this show, it opened my mind up. So I admit I have fallen victim to this. But go ahead.
No, and so yeah, we all have to a certain degree. But and see, the thing is, I'll tell you this: every person who's ever told me that I can't has made my career for me. I've made a career off of people telling me what I could not do. I've made an entire I wasn't supposed to be able to leave the country. I wasn't supposed to be able to go and learn languages. I wasn't supposed to be able to do this. I wasn't supposed to be able to do that. I mean, like, just so much stuff I wasn't. Quite frankly, I got to a point in my mid-20s where if you wanted me to do something, you could almost guarantee I'd do it by saying I wouldn't do it, right? And but that came from a culture of hearing what blind people supposedly could not do. So if I can't shoot, I'm gonna show you how well I can shoot. I can't go to a range. Watch this. You know what I mean? Like that, and that's it, bro. And that's how it happens.
Now, as a gun owner, make sense of the situation. Let's create one in terms of if a burglar comes in your house and you're a blind gun owner. How what you had just stated about not having to have vision and this and that. Equate that with, so, with you as a blind gun owner trying to defend yourself and trying to at least maybe, I don't know, kill the or injure that burglar. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, um, you want me? Let me
How,
make.
when you shoot, as a blind person, when you're shooting, how, and you, like you said, it doesn't really involve too much of having vision or having no vision at all. You still can defend yourself. Explain to the audience who may not understand what you mean in terms of how still are you able to defend an oncoming burglar, someone who's broken into your house. How do you actually defend that person? I mean, where do you know where you're shooting? Is there a certain thing that you listen for?
So that kind of gets back into scenario training. So whenever there are literally any number, any thousand scenarios for what could happen if someone breaks into your house. They have entire, down in Quantico and in a few other places that focus on that sort of training, they have shoot houses and kill houses that kind of simulate different facilities that you can go into and practice going from room to room and how to go around a corner and what to do if you hear this, or how to, you could even build something like that if you have enough space and time and material. But how to do it is going to depend on floor plan. It's going to depend on a lot of things. First things first, though, you're blind, so you're not going to be seeing the person. First off, how do you even know there's someone in the house? You probably heard the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, too, is going to depend. Oh, I feel like I'm not facing the camera. Blind problems, right? Another thing, too, is going to depend on children, right? It's also going to depend on, are you in a house? Are you in an apartment? There's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration before I can actually just answer that question. But one thing that that you're going to be doing is listening. One thing that you're going to be doing is making sure your family is where they are. Another thing you're going to be making sure of is, and this kind of gets back to gun safety. I didn't quite finish that list. This is a good interviews. That's what happens. But another thing that I was covering on that list is knowing that what's behind what you're. So I said, you remember how I said aim the gun in a safe direction?
Exactly.
You also need to know what's behind that safe direction. So if you know that you're aiming at a wall and that there's really nothing behind this wall but a parking lot. Okay, that's cool. What's behind the parking lot? You know what I mean? So
Gotcha. I got you. I'm following you.
Yeah. So go a bit deeper. When it comes to certain things. But it's safety is as safety does. So.
So all those things, I follow you, has to be taken into consideration as a blind gun owner, as someone who is protecting their themselves or their household, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because someone just posed a question that, say for instance, you're being rushed by several people and one person has a gun. How and it's legitimate questions.
You're being rushed by
How
several people and one person has a gun. Okay. That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked. So, how do you handle that? Well, that right there is technically, there are two different types of attack happening in that. There's a multiple attacker situation,
right,
and then there's a loose gun situation. So, if you got a shooter situation, if they're coming at you, and we're assuming that that they're coming at you, because in the question, it seems to assume that the person knows that. So I'm in a situation. I'm anywhere. If I'm in this dining room, for whatever reason, the door bursts open and a bunch of people charge through the door. This gets to knowing firearms. This gets to knowing ammunition. This gets to knowing a lot of things. But for one thing, what I'm thinking is target-rich environment. First off, they're rushing me. They're not actually moving away from me. So that's a good thing for a blind person. But it's not necessarily it's a bad thing if they move. Let's say, for example, if they start to move around you, they start to try to circle around you.
Right.
That's not good. The full frontal assault is honestly it's honestly the more honest attack for a blind person and the more easier to defend against, because the snake in the grass, the poison hand, if you will, the sneaky stuff is what you have to watch, because those are the enemies that you have to look out for. The enemy who knows that you're blind and tries to truly exploit your blindness, that's the enemy you have to look for, not necessarily the person who thinks you can't do anything. Those people are degrading and demeaning, sure, but those people are easy to take out. So if a person like that, if a person who thinks that you can't do anything just charges you with him and his friends, well, it depends on what I've got near me. If a simple handgun, that could be a bit of an artful process. Ideally, I want something that is like I said, not going to pierce the walls and hurt people outside of this building, outside of this apartment, because my situation is I'm in an apartment. But even if I was in a house, I still wouldn't want bullets to pierce the house and hurt people outside. So ideally, I'm going to want some sort of a shotgun, or at least a handgun that shoots shotgun shells. So if someone's going to charge in, I'm going to want something that I can blow them apart with without hurting people outside. And also, things happen. I also don't want to be piercing the walls of this house and hurting people in this house. So if that happens, blowing a few people apart and who are charging at me with a shotgun is going to be a lot easier and a lot safer than a lot of other methods.
And I've heard people say that before, and that kind of like makes sense, because
that's one. That I can poke holes in in what I just said too. There's problems with that theory. There's some serious issues with shotguns and self-defense in the home, but that is definitely one scenario that you could operate from, probably in a defensive fashion.
Okay. Now, as we conclude, this is interesting. I may want to come back and have another discussion about this, because it's very interesting. Talk about some of the laws in various parts of the country that allow blind people to own guns, like in what states and that have passed laws for blind gun owners. If any of these audience members wants to purchase.
So the reality is, there's no state in the union where a blind person cannot own a gun legally. But there are some problems. And the problems come in the form of local laws, usually. Either local laws or owners of gun stores who want to be particularly egregious or petty, or are just that uneducated or ignorant, backward, bigoted. You could pick all types of phraseology. But the reality is, it is your as an American, okay? As an American, it is your constitutional right to be able to own a firearm. So if you are in a state and you're walking into a store and they're giving you grief, and this is easier said than done, but I would just say go get a lawyer.
Okay.
That would be my, because that right there is a slam. And I would record it too.
Okay.
I would record the denial of service. I would record the denial of a constitutional right, and I would make sure that those people were shut down, lost their jobs or something. Make an example of them, because that's unfair, and that's also unsafe. That literally could put people and does put people at risk. It's a gross misuse of power. And it's definitely a show of, a show of a lack of responsibility definitely on the part of the people who are denying you, and definitely if there are such laws, if for some reason there are local laws that say that a blind person can't own a gun or something like that would equate to that, it's definitely a lack of responsibility of the lawmakers in your state.
Okay. Now, and I just want to touch on this. You don't have to go too much in detail, because I'm quite sure you know about it. Is there a difference between blind people who can own a gun and carry it out in the public, as opposed, what are the laws for or against?
Very good question. Very good question. Concealed carry laws. Okay, so concealed and open carry laws. Okay, so again, to a certain degree, because we are 50 states, we always have to get back to the states. But just briefly, there are states that are open carry states, where pretty much it is legal to pretty much, just like, right on the hip, to openly carry your firearm in public. some states have different have some states have, I mean, there are different open carry laws. Some states are a little bit more liberal with their carry laws than others.
Mhm.
Texas is actually one is famous for actually having people toting carbines inside of restaurants a lot of the time.
Mhm.
It seems extreme, but hey, every state has a culture. Some states are, a pistol on a pistol or whatever, whatever it is. Open carry is open carry. It just means what it means. It is legal to openly possess that firearm. Concealed carry is something completely different. Concealed carry is obviously a weapon that is not visible
Right.
at first glance or at first inspection or something. I don't remember how it's worded, but something like first glance or first inspection, um, something like this. So yeah, concealed weapons, and a concealed weapon could also be a knife. Also, it's not necessarily just
Guns.
guns. Yeah, it's not necessarily just guns. It could be a knife, especially combat knives. When we're talking like knives that exceed a certain size, combat knives. Um, so it's both of those. As far as simply there, you carrying is not owning. I mean, they are the same. As far you, let's put it this way: all carriers are owners. Not all owners are carriers.
Okay, gotcha.
That's the best way to think of it. So you can own a gun without actually having a license to carry. Quite a few people do. And quite a few people are happy with that because the only thing they really want it for is, hey, we maybe collectors purposes, maybe they inherited it, or maybe they are just avid shooters, they're enthusiasts, whatever the reason,
Mhm.
they have them, but they don't necessarily want to carry them around. So it's different stuff for different people.
So, in essence, do you know of any blind gun owners, or so wait, you said there's a difference between owners and carriers. So, let's say, do you know any blind people who are open carriers of guns with,
Open carriers, like
have it on their in their holster, working around in certain areas and
I
whatnot.
don't I don't know any blind people who take advantage of the open carry laws, no. But I definitely do know blind people who take advantage of concealed carry laws for sure.
Okay, yeah, I would understand that more so than any.
Yeah.
Well, wow, that was a mouthful of information, man. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise about this. Do you have any last minute words you want to say about gun owners and self defense, like merge them all together? Because I'm gonna bring you back.
Really. I mean, I like questions. I'm a teacher. I'm an instructor. I'm a student. I'm also a learner, and I also like to consider myself learned. So hopefully, maybe some interesting stuff comes out of this. Maybe some good questions or something like this. And I'm still learning too, guys. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I don't teach anything involving firearms right now. I'm not at that level. I'm striving to be at that level. So you know what I mean. I'm still learning too. So there's no, I'm not the arbiter of all knowledge. I get things wrong. I'm not above correction. I'm not not above. There's no sacred cow with me. So please ask, and please feel free to let me know if something I said was off, or if your state's different, or if you've got a question, or if I can help.
And I'll relay that to you, definitely.
For sure.
Do you have any videos just off the cuff of you actually shooting target practice, or do they allow?
I mean, I don't have. It's not like they say that you can't. I don't have any videos right now. I have done recordings. Like in my experience, sighted people take pictures, blind people record. So
Right.
I have had recordings of me shooting quite often. Lots of people have actually tuned into some of my shooting streams. I've done audio streams where I've gone to the range and shot. But I don't actually have any right now.
Well, if you do get some, please send them to me, and I'll put them up and let people check you out, man, for real.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
Well, Brando, I sure appreciate you coming on and sharing this for me and others and what have you. What's next for you, man? What's up? What's going
Man,
on?
I mean, honestly, next for me is just more training, more knowledge, more testing, like I said, I'm a full-time martial arts student, a full-time self-defense instructor. Although right now, students are kind of low, business
Yeah.
kind of slow. But even still, even though my business is slow, that doesn't mean my teacher's business have to be slow. So I'm
Okay.
studying, even if my own personal students are.
Well, I wish you the best of luck in everything else that you do, man. And I'm gonna call on you in a couple of weeks, man, to come back and talk about the martial arts self-defense.
Yeah, we can cover a lot of ground, bro.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, man, and thanks for tuning in to Third Eye Visions. And I hope you stay subscribed and share it with
Absolutely,
everyone.
man. This channel does awesome stuff, man.
I appreciate it,
I'm looking,
Brando.
I'm looking forward. I'm looking
Uh,
forward to getting it out there and making it happen, bro.
okay. Well, I appreciate you, man, for real. So with that being said, I'm gonna close out. Thanks for subscribing, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for tuning in, and everyone, be cool and have a wonderful rest of Sunday.